For thousands of years, across the great expanse of the galaxy, the name of humans was spoken only in whispers. To most alien civilizations, they were nothing more than a legend, a tale told around the fires of forgotten worlds. The stories claimed that long ago, before the empires rose, there was a species that burned bright, spread fast, and then vanished into the dark. They were called humans. Some laughed at the stories, saying they were lies invented to explain the ruins found on lonely planets. Others believed the myth, but only as a warning of what could happen if a people reached too far and fell too fast. But no one had ever seen one, not for millions of cycles. To the galaxy, humans were just a myth. On the planet Kareth, a place ruled by the great council of the Vayari, the myth was once again brought up. The council chamber was filled with tall figures with shining skin and crystal eyes. They were leaders of star systems and rulers of fleets. They spoke of threats on the border, of unknown signals that did not match any known empire. A shadow was moving in the void, something powerful, and some dared to whisper that perhaps the humans had returned. The words caused laughter in the hall, but the unease was real. Myths had power, even in the hearts of rulers. Far from that chamber, on a small research station orbiting the barren world of Luthis, a young scientist named Kellen worked late into the night. Kellen had always been drawn to old stories, the ones about the vanished species. He had collected data from abandoned colonies, from forgotten satellites, and from wreckage floating between the stars. Most of it was nothing, scraps of broken code, ruined machines. But one night, his screens lit up with a signal so strange and old that he froze in his chair. The signature was unlike anything used in the present age. It pulsed with rhythm, with meaning, almost like a heartbeat. He checked again, and his hands trembled. The code matched fragments from the ancient archives, fragments that were said to belong to humans. Kellen recorded the signal and sent it to his superiors, but the reply came fast and harsh. Do not waste time with myths. He knew what that meant. The council wanted no talk of humans. It was dangerous. It was forbidden. So he kept quiet, but he could not stop listening. Night after night, the signal grew stronger, as if someone or something was moving closer. The more he studied, the more he realized that it was not random noise. It was a message, simple and clear. It said, "We are here." While Kellen worked in secret, on distant trade routes, ships began to vanish. At first it was blamed on pirates, then on rival empires. But survivors told a different tale. They spoke of ships faster than light, of weapons that tore through shields, of voices speaking in a tongue no one understood. Many dismissed them as mad, but others remembered the myths. Humans, they said, had once been masters of war. If they had returned, the galaxy would not be the same. In the markets of the free worlds, traders argued over relics that suddenly appeared in black market stalls. Small metal discs, old tools, strange books written in dead symbols. Some claimed these were proof of the human return. Some claimed they were fakes, made to earn quick credits. But among the relics was one object that changed everything. It was a simple device, no larger than a hand. When touched, it projected an image in the air. The image was of a man and a woman, dressed in simple clothes, standing side by side on a blue world with oceans behind them. Their eyes were bright, their faces filled with hope. The image burned into the memory of all who saw it. For the first time, the galaxy saw the face of the myth, and no one could laugh anymore. The news spread like fire. Across empires and councils, debates raged. Some called for caution. Others demanded war. If humans were back, they must be controlled, before they grew strong again. But deep inside the void, beyond the edges of the mapped stars, a fleet stirred. Ships built from steel and fire, carrying a banner long forgotten. Their engines glowed blue, and their crews spoke in a language lost to time. They were the last sons and daughters of Earth, returning after an age of silence. To them, the galaxy was no myth. It was home, and it was time to reclaim it. Kellen, still on his lonely station, received the final piece of the message. His screens flashed, and the words appeared in a tongue no alien had ever seen. But somehow he understood them. They said, "This is humanity. We return." He sat frozen, staring at the message. His heart pounded, for he knew what it meant. The myth was alive. And soon, the galaxy would learn the truth. For thousands of years across the great expanse of the galaxy, the name of humans was spoken only in whispers. To most alien civilizations, they were nothing more than a legend, a tale told around the fires of forgotten worlds. The stories claimed that long ago, before the empires rose, there was a species that burned bright, spread fast, and then vanished into the dark. They were called humans. Some laughed at the stories, saying they were lies invented to explain the ruins found on lonely planets. Others believed the myth, but only as a warning of what could happen if a people reached too far and fell too fast. But no one had ever seen one, not for millions of cycles. To the galaxy, humans were just a myth. On the planet Kareth, a place ruled by the Great Council of the Veiri, the myth was once again brought up. The council chamber was filled with tall figures with shining skin and crystal eyes. They were leaders of star systems and rulers of fleets. They spoke of threats on the border, of unknown signals that did not match any known empire. A shadow was moving in the void, something powerful, and some dared to whisper that perhaps the humans had returned. The words caused laughter in the hall, but the unease was real. Myths had power, even in the hearts of rulers. Far from that chamber, on a small research station orbiting the barren world of Luthis, a young scientist named Kellen worked late into the night. Kellen had always been drawn to old stories, the ones about the vanished species. He had collected data from abandoned colonies, from forgotten satellites, and from wreckage floating between the stars. Most of it was nothing, scraps of broken code, ruined machines. But one night, his screens lit up with a signal so strange and old that he froze in his chair. The signature was unlike anything used in the present age. It pulsed with rhythm, with meaning, almost like a heartbeat. He checked again, and his hands trembled. The code matched fragments from the ancient archives, fragments that were said to belong to humans. Kellen recorded the signal and sent it to his superiors, but the reply came fast and harsh. "Do not waste time with myths." He knew what that meant. The council wanted no talk of humans. It was dangerous. It was forbidden. So he kept quiet, but he could not stop listening. Night after night, the signal grew stronger, as if someone or something was moving closer. The more he studied, the more he realized that it was not random noise. It was a message, simple and clear. It said, "We are here." While Kellen worked in secret, on distant trade routes, ships began to vanish. At first it was blamed on pirates, then on rival empires. But survivors told a different tale. They spoke of ships faster than light, of weapons that tore through shields, of voices speaking in a tongue no one understood. Many dismissed them as mad, but others remembered the myths. Humans, they said, had once been masters of war. If they had returned, the galaxy would not be the same. In the markets of the free worlds, traders argued over relics that suddenly appeared in black market stalls. Small metal discs, old tools, strange books written in dead symbols. Some claimed these were proof of the human return. Some claimed they were fakes, made to earn quick credits. But among the relics was one object that changed everything. It was a simple device, no larger than a hand. When touched, it projected an image in the air. The image was of a man and a woman, dressed in simple clothes, standing side by side on a blue world with oceans behind them. Their eyes were bright, their faces filled with hope. The image burned into the memory of all who saw it. For the first time, the galaxy saw the face of the myth, and no one could laugh anymore. The news spread like fire. Across empires and councils, debates raged. Some called for caution, others demanded war. If humans were back, they must be controlled before they grew strong again. But deep inside the void, beyond the edges of the mapped stars, a fleet stirred. Ships built from steel and fire, carrying a banner long forgotten. Their engines glowed blue, and their crews spoke in a language lost to time. They were the last sons and daughters of Earth, returning after an age of silence. To them, the galaxy was no myth. It was home, and it was time to reclaim it. Kellen, still on his lonely station, received the final piece of the message. His screens flashed and the words appeared in a tongue no alien had ever seen, but somehow he understood them. They said, "This is humanity. We return." He sat frozen, staring at the message. His heart pounded, for he knew what it meant. The myth was alive, and soon the galaxy would learn the truth. The galaxy was restless. Rumors spread faster than light, carried by merchants, smugglers, and wandering travelers. Everywhere, people whispered about the Ancient Ones. They said humans had returned. Some scoffed, saying it was impossible. Others grew afraid, remembering old tales of how humans had once fought entire empires and won. Fear and hope traveled side by side, and soon the name that had been only a legend was spoken in every corner of space. On the world of Kareth, the Vayari Council gathered again. The chamber was filled with light from crystals hanging in the air, and the voices of rulers echoed across the high walls. A tall figure with silver eyes stood at the center. His name was Valor, and he was one of the oldest members of the council. "The myth is no longer safe to ignore," he declared. "We have signals, relics, and witnesses. If humans have truly returned, they will not come as friends. History tells us they are conquerors." His words made the chamber uneasy. Some nodded, others shook their heads, but no one could dismiss the weight of his warning. Meanwhile, Kellen on his lonely station could not escape the signal. It pulsed in his ears like a drum beat, steady and alive. He did not sleep, did not eat much, only worked, translating every fragment he could. The messages became clearer. They were not threats, not at first. They spoke of survival, of loss, of a journey across the endless void. They spoke of Earth, a blue planet that no one in the present galaxy had ever seen. The messages told of how humans had been forced to flee long ago, their world broken by wars and disasters. Yet they carried hope. "We will rise again," the signal said. Kellen's heart stirred as he read the words. He no longer feared them. He wanted to see them. But while Kellen was filled with wonder, others were filled with dread. On the borders of the Dreven Empire, patrol ships had gone missing. When fragments of wreckage were recovered, the marks were unlike anything seen before. Hulls melted, engines ripped apart, weapons sliced as if by invisible blades. Survivors who crawled from escape pods spoke of shadowy figures, human in shape but fierce, moving through fire with unshakable resolve. "They did not speak our tongue," one survivor whispered, "but their eyes burned like stars." The Empire declared an emergency. Fleets were raised. War drums began to sound. On the trade routes, chaos reigned. Merchants avoided certain sectors, fearing ambush. Pirates fled from unseen enemies that tore their ships apart. Whole planets sealed their skies, refusing travelers. Yet no one could hide from the truth. Everywhere, small signs appeared, symbols carved on ruins, messages etched into satellites, words written in dead languages. All pointed to one truth. The humans were moving closer. Far away, deep in the void, the human fleet prepared. Their ships were massive, forged from centuries of survival. They bore scars of countless battles fought in the dark reaches of uncharted space. Inside those ships, men and women trained with discipline, their eyes sharp, their hearts bound by one purpose. They were the descendants of those who had left Earth. They had grown hard in exile, strong in suffering. They did not see themselves as conquerors. They saw themselves as survivors, returning to claim their rightful place in the galaxy. Among them, their leader stood tall, a man with weathered features and calm strength. His name was Admiral Joran. He gazed at the star maps, his voice steady. "The galaxy has forgotten us," he said. "They believe we are only a myth. Let us remind them who we are." Kellen received another message. This time it was not words, but an image. His screen showed a fleet drifting through the dark, ships shaped like arrows, engines glowing blue. At the center was a larger vessel, like a fortress of steel. Across its side, glowing faintly, were markings he did not know but somehow understood. They said, "Earth's children." He gasped. His hands shook. He knew then that he had to warn the council, even if they did not believe him. He sent his findings, every recording, every image, but instead of thanks, he received silence. Then came a warning: "Cease your research, destroy the data, for your own safety." Kellen stared at the message with despair. They were afraid, not of humans, but of the truth itself. The truth could not be hidden for long. One night, the signal changed. No longer a whisper, it became a roar, strong and clear. It spread through the stars, picked up by hundreds of stations, by ships, by colonies. It spoke in every tongue at once, translated by old machines hidden in the code. The voice was deep, human, filled with fire. "This is humanity," it said. "We are not a myth. We live. We return." The words shook the galaxy. Some cheered, others trembled, but none could ignore it. On Kareth, Vylor slammed his staff against the ground. "This is the end of peace," he cried. "If they are here, war will follow." The council split, some calling for alliances, others for fleets to strike first. Fear and pride blinded them. Yet far away in the void, Admiral Joran spoke quietly to his people. "We come not to destroy," he said, "but to endure. If they rise against us, we will defend ourselves, but we will never bow. Not again." Kellen sat at his console, staring at the stars outside his window. The myth was no longer a story. It was real. The galaxy had woken to a new age, and he knew deep inside that nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy was no longer the same. After the message spread, no one could pretend that humans were only a legend. From the richest empires to the poorest colonies, everyone now knew a truth that had been buried for ages. Humanity lived. Humanity returned. And no one knew what would happen next. On the crowded markets of the free worlds, traders argued loudly. Some claimed the humans would bring prosperity, new trade, and new ideas. Others swore they would bring only destruction and war. The relic with the human couple's image was now copied and sold across thousands of systems. Children pointed at the strange faces with wonder. To them, it was like meeting ghosts from the past. But behind the excitement lay fear. If humans had survived so long in exile, what strength had they gained? On Kareth, the council remained divided. Vylor spoke again, his silver eyes sharp. "We cannot wait. We must act now. Every moment gives them more time to prepare. If they rise unchecked, the galaxy will bow to them." His words stirred many. Fleets began to move, orders were given, and weapons forged. Yet some council members hesitated. They remembered old legends differently, not as warnings, but as lessons of courage. One whispered softly, "What if they return not as enemies but as allies?" The question was ignored, drowned in the noise of fear. Far away on his research station, Kellen watched the storm growing. He read every new transmission, every fragment of data. The messages became clearer, stronger. One spoke of unity, another of survival. The humans did not speak of conquest. They spoke of return, of finding their place among the stars. Kellen longed to believe in their hope. He wanted to stand before one to see with his own eyes that they were real. But he also knew the galaxy was preparing for war, and war would destroy everything before truth could be understood. The Dreven Empire acted first. They sent a massive fleet to hunt the humans, 1,000 ships armed with their deadliest weapons. The fleet moved into the void with confidence, banners blazing, their commanders boasting of swift victory. But when they reached the dark sector where the signals came from, silence fell. Hours turned to days, and no message returned. Finally, broken fragments of transmissions slipped through. The stars, screams, explosions, flashes of strange weapons. Then silence again. The great fleet was gone. Fear turned into panic. If the mighty Dreven Armada could vanish, who could stand against these ancient warriors? Across the galaxy, smaller empires began building defenses. Colonies locked their skies. The free traders vanished from dangerous routes. The myth of humans had become a shadow over every world, and no one felt safe. On the human flagship, Admiral Joran stood before his officers. The reports from the Dreven attack were fresh. His people had fought fiercely, not for conquest, but to survive. Many Dreven ships had been destroyed. Others fled into the dark. Yet Joran did not celebrate. He looked weary, his eyes heavy with the weight of history. "We are not here to conquer," he said firmly, "but we will not kneel. If they strike us, we will answer. The galaxy has forgotten what it means to be human. We will show them." His officers stood in silence, then bowed their heads. They knew the path ahead would not be easy. Among the humans, whispers spread too. Some wanted revenge for the exile, for the long centuries of being lost in the dark. They remembered the pain, the hunger, the endless wars against alien raiders in uncharted space. "Why should we forgive?" they asked. "The galaxy turned its back on us. Let us take what is ours." Others, like Joran, sought balance. They dreamed of rebuilding Earth, of sharing knowledge, of standing equal among the stars. But unity was fragile, and one spark could ignite old anger. Back on Kareth, Kellen risked everything. He smuggled his recordings to underground scholars, those who studied forbidden archives. They confirmed what he already knew. The signals were true, the relics real. Humanity was no myth. When they saw the image of the human fleet, some wept, for they felt as if destiny itself had returned. Others trembled, for they feared the galaxy was doomed. Kellen begged them to help spread the truth, not the lies of war. He believed humanity's return could be hope, not destruction. But even as he worked, the galaxy moved closer to fire. Another empire, the Kyr Dominion, sent its fleets to the borders, swearing to end the human threat before it grew. Tensions burned. Systems collapsed into chaos. The myth had become the most dangerous truth in the universe. In the quiet of his chamber, Admiral Joran gazed at a small object, a shard of stone carried from Earth itself, the last fragment of a home long gone. He closed his eyes and whispered, "We are not a myth. We are the children of Earth, and we are here." The words echoed softly in the silence of the ship. Outside, stars stretched forever, waiting to witness what would come. Kellen looked at the same stars from his lonely station. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, peace or war, hope or ruin. but he knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy braced itself for war. Rumors no longer filled taverns and markets. They had turned into cold facts. Entire fleets had disappeared when facing the humans. Ancient myths were now living nightmares for the empires, and panic spread faster than any ship could fly. Leaders argued in secret halls, soldiers sharpened their weapons, and ordinary citizens prayed to survive what was coming. On Kareth, the Vayari Council grew desperate. The chamber buzzed with fear and anger. Valor stood tall at the center once. Again, his voice sharp. "The Draven Empire is destroyed. The Kyr Dominion is moving their fleets. If we wait, humanity will crush us all. We must strike before they gather strength." His words struck deep into the hearts of those who listened. Yet a few dared to resist. A younger council member rose, her crystal eyes glowing softly. "What if they do not wish for war? Their messages speak of return, not conquest. If we attack blindly, we may become the destroyers of peace." Her voice trembled, but no one laughed. Still, Valor's power was great, and his call for war drowned out her plea. Kellen sat far away on his station, his body weary but his spirit burning. He had watched as more fragments of human transmissions arrived. They spoke of Earth, of unity, of dreams long lost but never abandoned. He listened to voices that carried pain, but also hope. The galaxy only saw weapons and fleets, but Kellen saw people, flesh, blood, and heart. He wished he could show them to everyone, to break the walls of fear. Yet when he sent his research again, it was ignored, erased, or blocked by the council. He was only one voice against the tide. Still, he refused to stop. Meanwhile, the Kyr Dominion launched their first strike. A fleet of 500 ships entered human space, engines roaring, weapons ready. The humans did not run. Admiral Joran stood on the bridge of his flagship, eyes steady. "Hold the line," he commanded. The battle that followed was like nothing the galaxy had seen for ages. The Kyr ships poured fire into the void, but human defenses held strong. Their weapons were swift, their tactics sharp, their unity unbreakable. Within hours, the Kyr fleet was broken. Some ships fled, others burned, and silence returned to the stars. Humanity had survived again. The news of the battle spread like fire. Across the galaxy, empires that once mocked the myth now trembled. Their fleets had fallen to shadows, their warriors beaten by a people thought dead. Fear grew so deep that some planets surrendered before a single human ship appeared. They sent messages offering peace, begging for mercy. But the humans did not answer. They kept moving forward, quiet and unstoppable. Among the humans, voices grew louder. Some demanded vengeance. They remembered centuries of exile, of being hunted by alien raiders while the great empires turned blind eyes. "They abandoned us," a young officer shouted. "They called us a myth. Let us show them our truth with fire." But Admiral Joran silenced them with a look. His words were calm but powerful. "We will not become what they fear. We are not conquerors. We are survivors. If they raise their weapons, we will fight. But we will not destroy without cause." His voice echoed through the fleet, giving his people strength. Yet deep inside, even Joran knew the path ahead would be bloody. Back on Kareth, whispers grew among the people. Ordinary citizens began to doubt the council's words. Some had seen the human messages themselves, signals that spoke of survival, not conquest. In secret, groups formed that believed humans could be allies. They called themselves the Listeners. Kellen became one of their leaders, though he never wanted power. He only wanted the truth to be heard. Together they spread recordings, hiding them in trade networks, slipping them into pirate channels. Slowly, More and more began to question whether the council was leading them to war out of fear, not wisdom. But fear was hard to silence. When another empire, the Jar Collective, reported that human ships had entered their border, chaos broke out again. Though no battle had yet happened, the council declared emergency. Armies marched, fleets prepared. The galaxy was on the edge of fire. Kellen sat by his window, looking at the endless stars. He wondered what it must feel like to stand inside one of those human ships, to see their faces, to hear their voices not through broken code, but in person. He wondered if he would ever have the chance. Somewhere out there, Admiral Joran stared at the same stars, holding the shard of Earth in his hand. Both men, though worlds apart, carried the same thought. The galaxy had reached a turning point. The myth was gone. The truth stood alive, armed and unbroken. And as fleets moved and alliances crumbled, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the moment when myth and reality would collide in fire. The galaxy was now living in fear. No one spoke of humans as a myth anymore. They were real, and they were powerful. Empires that once ruled without question now trembled. Armies trained harder, fleets grew larger, and spies searched for any sign of weakness in the returning race. But humanity, silent and steady, kept moving forward. On the human flagship, Admiral Joran stood with his officers. Maps of the galaxy floated above the table, glowing with shifting stars. Reports filled the air. The Kyr Dominion had fallen back. The Draven Empire was shattered, and the Jar Collective was preparing their defenses. His people looked to him for guidance. "They will not stop," one officer said. "Every empire will strike until they are certain we are gone. What will we do?" Joran looked at the map for a long time before answering. His voice was calm. "We will endure. We will show them that humanity is not a shadow or a curse. We will not kneel, and we will not vanish again." The crew nodded, but deep in their hearts, fear lingered. They knew the galaxy saw them not as survivors, but as a threat. Every battle they fought, every fleet they destroyed, added fuel to the fire of fear. Even if they wished for peace, would anyone believe them? Kellen, on his lonely station, felt that same question burning inside him. Through secret networks, the listeners spread more recordings of the human signals. People across systems began to hear the voices that spoke of survival, of unity, of a home long lost. Some wept, others grew curious. Small groups started to believe that humanity was not a danger, but a chance for change. Still, fear was stronger. The councils and rulers painted humans as monsters, legends reborn to destroy the stars. And most people, afraid of the unknown, believed their leaders. One night, Kellen received a message unlike the others. It was not a signal broken by static. It was direct, sharp, alive. His console lit up, and a face appeared on his screen. A human face, strong, lined with years of struggle, eyes steady as steel. The man spoke slowly, and though Kellen had never heard the language, somehow he understood. "This is Admiral Joran. We know you are listening. You hear us when others refuse. We do not wish to conquer. We wish to survive. Will you carry our voice?" Kellen's heart stopped. His hands shook as he leaned closer to the screen. He could barely speak, but he whispered, "Yes, I will." The message ended, leaving silence behind. Kellen sat frozen, his chest pounding. He had spoken to the myth, to the truth itself, and now he carried a burden heavier than any before. As days passed, the galaxy prepared for the largest war in its history. The Jar Collective, the Vayari Council, and smaller empires formed a fragile alliance. Their fleets gathered at the borders, millions of ships ready to strike. Leaders spoke of protecting the galaxy, of erasing the threat before it spread. Their speeches filled with fire, but underneath was fear. Fear of humans, fear of their return, fear of the unknown. Admiral Joran prepared his fleet as well. They were fewer in number, but stronger in unity. Every ship carried survivors, descendants of those who had endured centuries of hardship. They knew pain, they knew hunger, they knew loss, but above all they knew how to fight. Joran stood before them, his voice carrying through every ship. "The galaxy calls us monsters," he said. "They call us a danger, a curse, but we are more than that. We are the children of Earth. We are proof that hope can survive in the darkest night. If they come for us, we will stand together. If they seek to erase us, we will show them the truth." His words filled the fleet with fire, and they readied themselves for what was coming. Kellen sent one final message to the council. He begged them to listen, begged them to see that humanity was not only weapons and fleets, but people with dreams. His words were ignored. The council was already marching to war, but his message spread through hidden channels, carried by smugglers, pirates, and wanderers. Slowly, whispers of his plea reached ordinary people. Some began to question, to doubt the leaders who drove them into endless fear. The galaxy waited. Two forces stood on the edge of collision, the alliance of empires vast and powerful, and the human fleet, smaller but unyielding. Stars burned quietly around them, silent witnesses to the storm that was about to fall. On the night before the first great battle, Kellen looked at the stars from his small station. His heart ached with fear, but also with hope. He had seen the human face. He had heard the human voice, and he believed that somewhere in the fire and chaos to come, there was still a chance for peace. Far away, Admiral Joran held the shard of earth in his hand. His voice was low, but his crew listened. "We will not vanish," he whispered. "Tomorrow, the galaxy will remember what it means to face humanity." And with that, the myth of humanity stood ready to become the greatest truth the stars had ever known. The day of battle arrived. Across the edge of known space, the largest gathering of fleets in living memory prepared for war. The Allied empires filled the void with millions of ships, their banners glowing in the dark, their weapons charged, their engines roared, and their leaders promised victory. They believed they were fighting for survival, that if humans were not stopped now, no world would ever be safe again. Facing them stood the human fleet, smaller in number, but stronger in spirit. Their ships gleamed with steel, their engines burned blue, and their crews stood ready. On the flagship, Admiral Joran gazed at the endless armada before him. He knew the odds, knew how outnumbered they were, but his eyes did not waver. "They see us as a myth made flesh," he said softly. "Let us show them what humanity truly means." The first shots came from the Alliance. Thousands of beams lit up the void, tearing toward the humans. Explosions shook the darkness. Fire scattered through space. But the humans answered with precision. Their weapons cut through enemy lines, their tactics sharp, their discipline unshaken. Whole squadrons of alien ships fell in minutes. The Alliance commanders were stunned. The humans fought like shadows, moving faster than scanners could track, striking with power no one thought possible. Kellen watched from his small station, his screens glowing with streams of battle reports. His heart pounded as fleets clashed, as fire swallowed the stars. He whispered prayers no one heard, begging that humanity would survive, begging that the galaxy would see the truth. Each explosion tore at him because he knew every ship carried lives, human or alien, all caught in fear and pride. He wanted to scream, to stop it all, but he was powerless. On the battlefield, chaos reigned. The Jar Collective unleashed their deadliest weapons, massive energy spheres that devoured ships whole. But the humans adapted. Their smaller ships darted through the fire, slipping past shields, striking at weak points with surgical precision. The Vayari fleets charged in, believing their numbers would crush the myth. Yet every time they pressed forward, the humans pushed back harder, their lines unbroken. It was not only weapons that gave them strength, but unity, forged in centuries of exile. They fought as one. In the middle of the storm, Admiral Joren stood tall. His officers reported heavy losses, but his voice was calm. "Hold the line," he commanded again and again. His eyes burned with determination, and his people followed without hesitation. He knew this battle was more than survival. It was a message. If they fell here, humanity would vanish forever. But if they endured, the galaxy would never forget. The Alliance leaders grew desperate. Valor himself commanded one of the fleets, his crystal eyes blazing with fury. "They are only flesh and bone," he roared. "They are nothing but shadows of the past. Break them!" His ships pushed harder. But his words could not hide the fear in his heart. For every human ship destroyed, 3 more alien ships burned. The myth was proving stronger than the truth he had always believed. Kellen could not sit still any longer. He sent message after message into the channels, broadcasting what he had learned. He repeated the human transmissions, their words of survival, their cries of hope. Many ignored him, but some heard. On planets far away, ordinary people listened to the voices of humans and began to wonder if the war was built on lies. In the middle of fire and chaos, a seed of doubt began to grow. Hours passed, and still the humans fought. Their fleet was bleeding, ships torn apart, lives lost. But the Alliance bled more. Millions of alien ships fell to pieces, scattered across the stars. At last, silence began to spread where once there had been thunder. The Alliance fleets pulled back, broken and afraid. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, they had found a people who refused to die. When the battle ended, the void was filled with wreckage. Fires burned in silence. Bodies drifted through the cold. The humans, scarred but unbroken, stood tall. Admiral Joren looked at the ruins of both fleets. His eyes were heavy with sorrow. "This is not the future I wanted," he whispered, "but this is the truth they forced upon us." His officers stood quietly, waiting for his command. At last, he spoke. "We will rebuild. We will heal. And we will remind the galaxy that humanity is not a curse, but a people who endure." Across the galaxy, the shock of defeat spread. Councils that once laughed at the myth now sat in silence, their pride shattered. Fear still ruled them, but it was no longer simple fear of a story. It was fear of a truth too strong to erase. Some called for another war, swearing the humans must be destroyed at any cost. Others began to whisper that perhaps the humans should be heard. The galaxy was divided, and the balance of power had changed forever. Kellen sat in his station, exhausted, his eyes red from watching the endless reports. He whispered to himself, "They survived. They truly survived." For the first time, he smiled through his tears. He knew the war was not over, but he also knew humanity had proven itself. The myth had become truth, and the truth could not be hidden again. And in the silence of the stars, humanity stood unbroken, their voices carrying through the void. "We are here. We will endure." The galaxy had changed forever. The great battle was over, but its echoes spread across every world and every council chamber. Millions of ships had been lost. Countless lives burned away in the fire, and still humanity stood unbroken. The myth had survived. The truth could no longer be denied. On Kareth, the Vayari Council met once more. Their hall, once proud and filled with certainty, was now a place of silence and shame. Many of their fleets had been destroyed, their people were restless, and whispers of rebellion filled the streets. Valor, who had demanded war, stood tall but weary. His silver eyes no longer glowed with confidence. "We fought with all our might," he said, "and still they stand. If we do not act again, humanity will rule the stars." His words echoed, but they no longer inspired. One council member rose, her voice sharp. "No," she said. "If we fight again, we will lose everything. Humanity is not a myth anymore. They are people. Perhaps it is time to listen." For the first time, the chamber was split not by fear of humans, but by fear of their own mistakes. Kellen watched this from the shadows. His secret group, the listeners, had grown. Across the galaxy, more and more people listened to the human messages he spread. Farmers on distant worlds, merchants on trade routes, even soldiers in the fleets. They heard the human voices speaking not of conquest, but of survival. Some began to question their leaders. Some began to dream of a galaxy where humans were not enemies, but allies. Kellen knew it was dangerous, but he believed it was the only way forward. Meanwhile, in the wreckage of war, humanity gathered their strength. Admiral Joran walked through the halls of his flagship, his boots echoing on steel floors. His people saluted him, their eyes filled with respect and trust. He had led them through fire, but he knew the cost. Thousands of human lives had been lost in the battle. Every survivor carried scars, still they did not despair. They worked tirelessly, repairing ships, tending to the wounded, and building again. For centuries, they had lived with hardship. To them, rebuilding was not new, it was life. Joran stood before his officers once more. His voice was steady, though heavy with grief. "We survived their fury," he said. "But survival is not enough. If we remain only as warriors, they will never see us as anything more than a threat. We must show them that humanity is more than weapons. We are builders, dreamers, and people who endure. That is our true strength." His words filled the room with quiet determination. His officers nodded, not with fire, but with resolve. Far across the stars, the alliance that had once been united now began to break apart. The Dreven Empire was shattered, their fleets gone. The Kyr Dominion licked its wounds, retreating to their worlds. The Jar Collective withdrew, fearful and humiliated. Even the Veyari began to doubt their leaders. For the first time in memory, the great powers of the galaxy were weak. And in that weakness, voices of change grew louder. Some called for new wars, but others spoke of peace, of alliances, of finding a new path before the galaxy tore itself apart. In the markets of the free worlds, traders sold recordings of human voices like treasures. Children played games pretending to be humans, shouting words they barely understood. Songs were sung of the myth that was now alive. Humanity, once only a story told by wanderers, had become the heartbeat of the galaxy. Kellen received another message, this time more personal. The screen lit up with Admiral Joran's face once again. His voice was calm, his eyes weary but kind. "We know you listen," he said. "You have carried our voice farther than we could alone. For that, we thank you. But the path ahead is long. The galaxy fears us, and fear is not easily broken. Will you continue to help us?" Kellen's throat tightened. He whispered back, though he knew Joran could not hear his answer directly. "Yes. As long as I live, I will carry your truth." But while hope grew in some places, darkness grew in others. Valor and those like him still believed that humanity could not be allowed to stand. In secret halls, they began to plan again, searching for new weapons, new strategies, anything that could end the human return. They feared not only human strength, but the shift in power. If ordinary people began to see humans as allies, then the councils and empires would lose control. Pride, fear, and power fed their hatred. Admiral Joran knew this as well. He looked at the shard of earth in his hand and whispered to himself, The galaxy will not change in a day, but we will not vanish again. We will endure, no matter what. They do. His people worked beside him, their spirits hardened by centuries of exile. They had learned to live with enemies, to survive storms, to fight against impossible odds. To them, the galaxy's fear was just another storm to endure. Kellen sat by his console, staring at the stars. He thought of the humans, of their voices, filled with pain and hope. He thought of the councils, drowning in pride and fear, and he wondered what path the galaxy would choose, war or peace, fear or hope, myth or truth. He knew only one thing for certain. The story of humanity was far from over, and as the stars shone silently across the endless void, the myth of humans continued to grow. Not as whispers, not as legends, but as a living truth that no empire could erase.